Morning, Coach. Thanks for taking the time. We'll get started with John McMullen and then Martin Frank.
Good morning, Jim. Now that we're through the training camp process, and obviously there's been no preseason games, I wanted to get your thought process on the evaluation period, how it's changed for you, how it's been different. Is it more difficult, or have you been able to overcome it?
Yeah, I think different is the best adjective that you use there. I think that there's still plenty of times to evaluate players. In a normal year, you draft a guy or you have a guy that's left over from the year before and you see him progress through the offseason program, whether he looks stronger, faster, better technique, those kind of things. And then you get him in the classroom and you're saying, okay, yeah, his understanding is better. And then you validate that by going out to do position drills in phase 2. And then you validate that again with OTAs and mini camp. And then you have a month off. And then you come back and, validate it again in training camp. And then you validate it again with your first scrimmage. And then you validate it through preseason games. And the only thing we really have now, we missed that spring. We didn't miss the knowledge of the scheme and things like that because we were able to evaluate that just doing things like we're doing right now, just, going over Microsoft Teams. And then you did see where guys were at the beginning of training camp, and you did have a couple scrimmages that you could see, but we did miss out on those preseason games. We've had enough practice time, enough individual time, enough technique work and things like that, that we have a good evaluation of our guys. Nothing really replaces live game reps. I just tell a quick story. Whenever we had rookies in particular, they always start off, they're overwhelmed, and then they come back and they seem like they got it. And then we have that open practice at the link, and there'd be, 40,000 people over there, singing Fly, Eagles, Fly. And those guys would sort of go to pieces. Things that a couple days ago they had mastered, all of a sudden they would just blow circuits because it was their first exposure to that kind of environment. Same thing for like the first preseason game. But then you saw the players just settle down. And they're like, yeah, I got this. And it's, and they knew what to expect. So there is that little bit of uncertainty because even when we did go over the link and we did see some of that stuff that, guys had stone cold a couple days before, we had some missed assignments over at the link. But, even when there was no fans, we saw that. But now we don't have preseason games. So even though we had a lot of time to evaluate, you're still missing that, okay, what about the real bullets flying and how is this player going to react to that? Is he ready for that? And those are things we're just going to have to go with, practice film and instincts and experience to evaluate. Sorry, that was a super long answer.
Go ahead, Martin, and then Jimmy.
Hi, Jim. I was wondering just what you've thought of the play overall of Fletcher Cox. I mean, we've seen, during the 2.5 weeks we were allowed in, him matched up on Jason Peters quite a bit. I mean, just what kind of matchup that was and how do you think Fletch has done and everything?
Yeah, Fletch is such a great player. And one of the joys of training camp for me over the last 4 years has been watching Fletch compete with Brandon Brooks, who is one of the top guards in the NFL. And, that was always fun to watch. Brandon would win some, Fletch would win some. And you just talk about two supreme players at their position, two of the best players at their position in the National Football League, and get a chance to watch that every day in practice. That was just great. And now you have a guy that is, has had a Hall of Fame career as a left tackle that now moves in there. And you see that same kind of thing. It was new for JP as JP's, learning how to play guard. But, there were times you just sat back and said, hey, look, these are potential 2 Hall of Famers going at it in practice. Those are always great for your evaluations. But, I'd say our competition, mainly Malik against Isaac on the other side, has been outstanding also. Those are top players at that position also. And then having an experienced, center like Kelsey in there that adds just a completely different dynamic. So those interior guys, that has really been outstanding competition for us. It's made us better, and I hope it's made the offense better.
Go ahead, Jimmy, and then Brandon.
Hey, Jim. I think one of the guys that we haven't asked you about yet is Graylin Arnold, who isn't the biggest or fastest DB, but seems instinctive. Made a lot of plays in college. What are your thoughts of him throughout camp?
Yeah, how big or fast a guy is, or all those measurables, those pro day workouts and combine workouts. When we get to the first day of training camp, those things aren't even on anybody's mind anymore. It's how you perform on the field. And Graylin, along with a lot of those other young safeties, Kayvon, Elijah, those guys have really done a good job in the in what they've been asked to do. I said this last week. It's a very difficult situation for safeties. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot of moving pieces. They don't have many opportunities to get chances to sort of get their feet under them. But what you've seen from those guys is you've seen the ability. All of those guys has shown really well. And, there's been plenty of safeties that are shorter players. There's been plenty of guys that are taller players that have had success in the NFL. It's not about that anymore. Once you're in the mix, it just becomes about, your ability to perform, your instincts, your work ethic, your heart, all those things. And, all those guys have all those characteristics. We're going to have some real tough decisions at a lot of positions, but particularly our safety position.
Go ahead, Brandon, and then Zach Berman.
Hey, Jim. Jeremiah Washburn was on your coaching staff in Detroit, and now he's listed as a senior defensive assistant here in addition to his front office role. What's your relationship with him like, and what kind of value does he add?
Well, first of all, he's one of the smartest coaches I've ever met, one of the smartest people I've ever met. And just has a great nature about him. Nothing ever phases him. He's very even keeled, and he's a triple threat. He's outstanding with the players. He's outstanding with technique, and he's also got a really keen eye for scouting. And he's done all those things. I mean, I saw a lot of the same things. I started my career in scouting in the NFL. Jeremiah started his career in scouting, flipped over to coaching. He flipped over with me, had a great way to connect with players. And he's been a great addition for our staff. I mean, having a former offensive line coach that can tell you, sort of has the keys to the kingdom as we evaluate schemes or we try to figure out the best way to attack an offense. It's just a great asset. I think Jeremiah's got such an outstanding future. I think that guy can be a GM in the NFL. I think he could be a head coach in the NFL. I think he's probably one of the hidden, or the people in the NFL know about him. But I think just as far as people in the general public and media and stuff, he's sort of flown under the radar. That's not going to be for very long. He's just way too talented for that.
Go ahead, Zach, and then Chris Franklin.
Hey, Jim, have you had to, I guess, reassess your expectations or the role for Hargrave because he hasn't had this time to learn either the scheme or the new position?
Yeah, I mean, it's set him back from a standpoint of time on the grass, and it's just been a perfect storm or an imperfect storm, however you'd want to put it. If we would have had a complete offseason and he would have missed a time in camp, you'd feel real good about just plugging him in. But you combine no offseason, new to the scheme, new to the team. He was introducing himself to the locker room in the beginning of training camp. Generally that stuff's all, below. There's some stuff he's been able to do. He's a student of the game. He stayed really active, and he's up on all of our stuff. But there is a difference between that and doing it in person. Now, he also has been in the league. He's not a rookie. So he has experience under him, and there's a lot of things that we do that are different than other people, but there's also a lot of things we do that have some carryover for him. When he's healthy, he'll be up to speed pretty quickly. I'm really excited about him. I think he's going to be a great addition to us, and he's a great complement for the other guys that we have.
Chris, and then Les.
Hey, Jim. You mentioned last week that linebacker and safety are two of the toughest positions for rookies to learn. When it comes to Sean Bradley, how have you feel has his progression been getting acclimated to your system? And do you feel he has the versatility to play three different linebacker, 2 or 3 different linebacker positions if something were to occur to injury wise?
Yeah, all of our linebackers have to have that versatility. There's very few of our guys that only play one position. It's just sort of the nature of what offenses do and the jet motions. They can make your Mike the Sam or your Will the Mike. So all those guys have to be able to play all those positions. But with our young players, safeties and linebackers, we've tried in this camp just to settle them at one position. Just let him get his feet under him at that position. But eventually that's going to be on his plate like everybody else. I actually just had a conversation with him the other day about this. And, I had an economics professor in college that explained like sort of the paths of learning. When you're first introduced to a subject, you think it's really hard. And then all of a sudden you get past the rudimentary stuff and you're like, man, this is easy. And then all of a sudden you get past that and you find out there's a lot more depth behind it and, and there's a lot more variables behind it. And you become, oh my gosh, this is hard again. And then that settles down and then it becomes easy again. And that's the process that most of our guys take with learning. It's hard when they first get that playbook and, oh my gosh, there's so much. And then they're like, yeah, I got this. And then they go out and the offense starts motioning and flying guys around and there's different checks and different calls and their head starts spinning. But then they get it and then their temperatures can decrease a little bit. And, and then it's a little bit like driving a car. When you first drive a car, you're thinking about putting that turn signal down and where your hands are and your feet and everything. And then after you've been driving for a while, it's just automatic. The car's driving, but you're not even thinking about the car driving. He's not at that point yet. None of our rookies are at that point yet. Guys like Snake weren't at that point when they were rookies. But eventually they'll all get there. He's probably just coming out of that. It was easy, and all of a sudden it was hard. And he's just getting to that point where now it's starting to slow down for him. But that's really typical of rookies. Seen it for 28 years in the NFL. He's going to be an outstanding young player for us. Him and Davion, really good additions for our team there. The guys that can run, guys that have some size. We're really lucky to have both of those guys.
We got time for a couple more, so we'll do Les and then Ruben.
Hi, Jim. You guys have been together now at NovaCare for more than a month. The latest numbers from the league on COVID are very encouraging. As we get into the season, are you more optimistic that, maybe you were always optimistic that the league could do 16 games in the playoffs on schedule with travel and things like that? What has been your experience with this? Are you surprised that guys haven't gone out at night and, gotten into situations that would compromise them? What do you think?
Yeah, there's a couple things I'm good at. I'm good at doing what I'm told and leaving decisions for people that are smarter than me for stuff like that. So I like, as far as 16 games or ever, I just figure if I show up early in the morning and leave late at night, I'm not going to miss anything, and then just take it one day at a time and take it as it comes. It's not unusual. Players are very regimented. Coaches are very regimented. You have to have discipline to succeed in this league, whether it is a coach, a player, a scout, front office person. It's a long season, and you have to be methodical and you have to be disciplined. So doing that in your job is no different than doing that with different protocols that are thrown in front of us or anything else. It just becomes another part of the job. But we're used to, complying with rules. We're used to doing things a certain way and that kind of consistency. And we're also used to, sort of sudden change, anything that comes. Every defense trains for, an offensive turnover that all of a sudden you're back on the field in one play, or, a special teams turnover. You have to have that mindset. And I think that mindset will go a long way to putting us in a good position with anything that's thrown at us.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Rube.
Hey, Jim. Considering everything we've talked about today, just the lack of learning and the lack of time on the grass, will you coach any differently? Will you have to coach any differently, dumb it down, be simpler in any ways, at least earlier in the season, as these young guys are still kind of learning the whole process?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this: there hasn't been any lack of learning. Really, it's been lack of experience, because there's a difference between going out in the thud practice and going out in the preseason game. But I will say this: we are no different in terms of where our installation is. All the things that that we have ready to go, because training camp is not just about getting ready for Washington or anything else. You got to get ready for your whole 16 game season. There might be some things that you might not use until week 12, but you got to get ready for them in training camp. And a little bit like the lockout season in 2011, coming up here on the end of camp, I don't feel any different than a normal camp as far as what we have in our scheme, what we've been able to accomplish, things like that. The only thing we've just really been lacking is that evaluation time, and that adds a little bit more uncertainty of how guys will perform once we get to the regular season. But from a scheme standpoint, from a learning standpoint, everything else, we're 100% at full throttle with all that stuff. I think the guys have really responded well. We've had a lot of walkthrough times and different things like that, and the guys have really taken advantage of that. And I don't feel like we've been shortchanged as far as scheme and that sort of things.
All right. Thank you, Coach. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, guys.